Well, good morning and welcome to Northern Lights Spiritual Center. Northern Lights is a community of people dedicated to using spiritual and practical principles to create lives we want to live. Northern Lights Spiritual Center offers practical and spiritual tools to make positive changes in our lives. My name is Rev.Vaughan Amaré, and I am the co-minister with Reverend Mykal Amaré. And this center was founded by Reverend Pamela Grace Beatty. Here at Northern Lights, we acknowledge our presence here on the traditional and unceded lands of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish and Salish peoples. These people are still here, and we join with them in how they continue to honor and bring to light their ancient heritage. We seek to resist the erasure of indigenous histories as we work towards honoring and inviting the truth. Please join me in our opening song, In This Very Room, written by Ron and Carol Harris. This very room, there's quite enough love for all the world. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all the world. And there's quite enough peace and quite enough power to walk through our
Good morning. This is a time that we set aside for a brief meditation. So I just invite you, wherever you are, to allow yourself to relax. And if you feel comfortable closing your eyes, do so. And we're going to take a few deep breaths in to center ourselves. So let's breathe in and breathe out. And you can do this audibly. Breathe in. Breathe out. One more time. Breathe in. And breathe out. This morning, seeing this month we're based on the idea of faith. And just invite us to contemplate, what does faith mean to you? And how do you use faith in your daily life? Does it guide you? Does it make you feel full? Do you get irritated by it? And I'm talking about your faith, no one else's. Your own individual faith. Because each of us are that individualized expression of the divine. be similar to others. So for a few moments, just contemplate, what is faith? What do I mean by the word faith? And so I'd just like to say that in this faith, that I personally have the faith of God instead of the faith in God that is outside of me. For each of us, it's that love, it's that divine essence of the one. And so with that, I invite you to come back to your space. And so it is. Now for today's reading, it comes from an article on the internet. It's by Reverend Sharon Salt Harfman, and it's Faith and Values. What inspires you to love and do good? When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, okay. They gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? Jesus said, you shall love God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. I love that Jesus trumps the religious leaders of his day. But what really sticks with me is Jesus' teaching. Everything depends on just two laws. Laws about love. Religion at its heart is not about morality or laws. It's about love of self, God, and neighbor. That is something that should resonate with people of every faith or secular tradition. So, should we get rid of the rest of the laws? Heavens no. But don't all those laws need to be tested with the law of love? If the law is unjust, if it cannot meet the criteria of love, then it should be set aside. I appreciate the testimony of atheist George Bernard Shaw. On this, he said, I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the community. And as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for whatever I can I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. Measure that against Jesus' words, and it gets an amen. But I am really drawn to the wisdom of the great church father Augustine. The story goes that he was asked by a new Christian convert how he should live. Augustine's answer, love and do as you please. Imagine that. All we need to do is love. Because if you truly love, what you will please to do is good. But I have heard Christians say that we are good simply because we accept Jesus as our Savior, or subscribe to certain doctrines, or just go worship or volunteer to usher a church at once a month. Those things certainly are not bad. But I sometimes ask myself why we make the Christian faith so difficult, when really it is simple. Love God, self, and neighbor. Love and do you please. Or is it simple? The mandate is clear, but it isn't always easy to love, really love. Or is it? If it would be easy to love, would there be any wars? Would people go hungry? Would we need shelters for abused, or pantries for the hungry? Would it be easy to love if we respected all kinds of diversity, racial, religious, nation, sexual, age, ability, talents? Would it be easy to love if we recognize the limits of our own ability, creating more compassion in us for limits in others? That's why we need church, and I like to say community, to practice loving people. If you don't go to church, then practice in your family, your school, workplace. There's bound to be someone there that you find difficult to love. So what moves you? What makes you feel? Go and do likewise. And so it is.
So today is our final rendition of the month's chant. So much can trigger my fear. So much can fill me with rage. So much I don't want to hear. I need all my power to say. I call on my faith within, the source of all creation, the presence of God unseen, connection of every relation. So please join me if you care to, be sung to if you prefer that. So much can trigger my fear. So much can fill me with rage. So much I don't want to hear. I need all my power to say. I call on my faith within, the source of all creation, the presence of God unseen, connection of every relation. I believe. Now, the verse with you. So much can trigger your fear. So much can fill you with rage. So much you don't want to hear.
life was nothing but an awful song. But now I know the meaning of true love. I'm leaning on the everlasting arms. If I can see it, then I can be it. If I just believe it, there's nothing to it. I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. Think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. I see me running through that open door. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly. You see that I was on the verge of breaking down. Sometimes silence can seem so loud, but there are miracles in life I must achieve. And first I know it starts inside of me. Oh, if I can see it, then I can be it. If I just believe it, there's nothing to it. I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and not fly away. I believe I can soar. I see me running through that open door. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly. 'Cause I believe in me. If we can see it, then we can be it. If we just believe it, there's nothing to it. I believe we can fly. I believe we can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread our wings. I believe I can soar. I see me running through that open door. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly. I believe I can fly. If I just spread my wings, I can fly. And you can fly. We can do anything we want to do. We can go anywhere we want to go. We can fly. We can
Technical issues. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay. Well, welcome. It's good to see that people are here. I hope you're all doing well. Today is our final installment this month around looking at faith and about overcoming fear and how those two intermesh. What I wanted to play with a little bit today, I don't know, in the past week or so, has anyone had an experience of fear? Okay, so Mykal has, Reba hasn't, Cheryl is shaking her head, so maybe she hasn't, and I can't see Daryl or Phyllis. However, I would claim that I definitely have had a number of experiences of fear. I'll tell you when it was described in the news about how President Trump and Attorney General Barr are making arrangements, are setting it up. The announcement that keeps coming around is that at first one of the things that he said is that he won't transition peacefully. When asked that question, he wouldn't answer. He said there won't be any ballots. If we just get rid of ballots, then there's no need for a transition, and we'll see what happens. So my fear was that he's basically broadcasting the notion of it's time for a dictatorship. The country really needs a dictatorship, and Attorney Barr has clearly indicated that he's able to find legal support for a dictatorship. And out of all of the news in the world, they snatched up 7 cases of votes that had gone awry. So President Trump, who has been identifying that the election process is just rife and filled with all kinds of terrible things, and that we'll never know if it's a free and fair election, and the Democrats are pulling all of this stuff. All of that language created a place of fear for me. Point 2, in terms of fear that I experienced, when the Attorney General in Louisville, Kentucky, was arranging for the communication about the case for Breonna Taylor, they had actually, a day ahead of it, had called in the National Guard. And you don't call in the National Guard because you're imagining that the pronouncement from the grand jury is going to be a positive one. And the announcement from the grand jury, they didn't even look at the murder of Breonna Taylor. Out of the 3 police officers, 1 was charged for reckless endangerment because of shooting bullets through Breonna Taylor's apartment and the possible risk to the neighbors. But they didn't even bring to question the circumstances surrounding the murder of Breonna Taylor. And I don't know that it was as much as fear as just a sense of despair or a sense of shock that a human being could be killed in her own bedroom. Police bust in and start shooting. And I don't know that it's fear for me because I haven't lived in a place where people can come breaking into my house and shooting at me. But I know that there are many people who have that fear. If your skin color is not white like mine, you have to navigate the world in a completely different way than I do. You have to go out and think, how might I be perceived? How do I talk in response to questions? How do I act in response to a white cop engaging me with hostility, engaging me with racism and prejudice and a lack of kindness? I bring this all forward because sometimes the habit in religious science teachings is to look at things very individually and to identify how our individual consciousness is the centerpiece from which everything blossoms. And the thing about it is, in my opinion, when Ernest Holmes was conveying and generating this teaching, there wasn't a whole lot known logically. Our understanding of human behavior and our understanding of systems was very, very limited. So, as an organization, if Centers for Spiritual Living continues to just look at how I, as the center of my world, engage, it misses how I participate in and contribute to all kinds of systems that are operating, that are acting, that are pressing on and pushing into the lives of so many people. One of the things that was shared this week is that Ruth Bader Ginsburg is the first woman to have a state viewing, that she was in Congress, that she was in the congressional building. This is the first time for women. Just think for a minute how much systemic disregard for women has been perpetrated. There's all kinds of raising and praising and uplifting the founding fathers. A couple of weeks ago, we watched Hamilton, and at the very tail end of Hamilton, it was probably the most powerful moment for me that his wife Lizzie was engaged in all kinds of activism. She was an abolitionist. She was advancing because her husband had been an orphan, because he died and his mother died and he was in bed with her, and then he was just left all on his own. Lizzie took up so many different causes, and it's shocking to me that you can have a person engaging in the world with such care, with such love, like Reverend Mykal was speaking to in the talk, that she was pushing forward how society would respond. And it wasn't common knowledge. It certainly wasn't taught to me in my elementary school social studies. Again, you hear about the founding fathers, and then every once in a while there's an occasional nod to a founding mother, but for the most part, our country just idolizes men. And in that idolization, I want to hearken back to one of the so-called commandments that Moses received in the desert for his people. You won't worship false idols. But we are frickin' worshiping false idols all the time. So this commandment, this direction, this guidance on how to live gets ignored so often. One of the things that often happens in religious science, in the Centers for Spiritual Living, is, put your mind on something. What is it that you want? What is it that you want? And sure, it's maybe a great opening to come into this teaching, because we all come in with holes in our lives, things that we really want. And the notion that if we shift our beliefs, if we shift how we look at it, we can call those things to us. But if we don't go beyond that calling in of stuff, if we don't go beyond and continuing to grow and continuing to uplift, then we're just stuck worshiping statues of golden calves. So what do we do in the face of this? what do we do in the face of times that we fall into fear, or we fall into despair, or we become discouraged? Or maybe I'll claim it. So when I fall into fear, I fall into discouragement. It may not happen for any of you. So you're just kind of my self-help group who's guiding me through what to do. What I'd like to play with is there has been this teaching within religious science and within New Thought work around kingdoms of consciousness. And I bring this forward because oftentimes we think about development, and we're here first, and then we're here, and then we're here, and then we're here. We tend to think of development as this moving line, as this train that's going by. But the difficulty is that we flip back and forth. There's the game Chutes and Ladders. Sometimes we go forward and sometimes we go backwards. And my apprehension is if we don't acknowledge that we are moving forward and sometimes we're moving backwards, when we don't acknowledge it, we set people up to feel, well, ashamed. We set people to feel like failure. We set people up to put them down. And actually that putting down is from what I would say the first kingdom of consciousness. So the way to think about these kingdoms is life, it happens to me. It's done by me. It's done through me. Or it's done as me. So let's dig into what each of those mean and what the significance is. I talked about and I brought to mind the notion of feeling discouraged or feeling afraid. Some of that comes from the notion of life is happening to us. And we can perceive it as we just don't have any control. I mean, did any of us feel like we had control that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died? Did we feel like we had an active part in her death? Sometimes there are things in life that just happen. The feeling that can come with that is helplessness, because we don't see our place in it. We don't see anything that we can do. And we think, why does this happen? Why did it happen that she died before the next election? That's what she was really holding out for. Her granddaughter reported that. She said, I was holding on because I wanted to retire in the midst of a woman's presidency. She thought that was possible. That was what she hoped for. And President Obama, she didn't want to give it up then. She really wanted to hold on and step up, and she thought, well, look at this. We have our first African-American president. Isn't this a great advancement? But the reaction to it and the experience of it really let all of the cockroaches come out of the walls. I mean, there's so much about, well, I'm not racist. The notion of anybody not racist. On Avenue Q, there's this song, everyone's a little bit racist, everyone's a little bit wrong. The song identifies that we can think that we are clean and we can think that we are pure of heart, but there are these systems that are locked into place. Racism is about disproportionate distribution of power. This teaching can sometimes say, well, everybody has access to power. And that notion that everybody has access to power doesn't look at the systems in which we live. I think I mentioned it before, but I'm going to bring it up again, and you can all think, oh God, won't he shut up? But I won't. The fact is that we have more people of color imprisoned than we had people enslaved. Systems are in place to do that. There is not equal justice under the law. In our Pledge of Allegiance, we talk about equality. We talk about equal justice. And under my breath, when I'm kneeling in the schools, when school is in session, when I'm kneeling during the Pledge of Allegiance, rather than standing with my heart on my hand on my heart, equal justice for those who could afford it. Case after case after case, we've seen how rich white boys can get away with rape, and the idea is, oh, we don't want to ruin their good little lives, so we're not going to really charge them, or we're not going to, they can do some community service. But and when it's been a person of color that's engaged in lesser activities, the outcome is far worse. So what do we do when we find ourselves in this place? We need to identify ourselves in the process of blaming and shaming and get over that. Stop blaming the system and start seeing how I contribute to the system. Stop shaming others. Well, you said kind of a racist thing. You're not very woke. That blaming and shaming still holds us in a position of superiority. When we find ourselves in Kingdom 1 consciousness, life is happening to me. Catch ourselves in the actions of blaming and shaming, and as I've talked about in other things, Bob Newhart played a psychiatrist. And in one of the shows, a woman came to him and said, I just can't get out of my house. And he said, oh, I can fix that. Fix that in 5 minutes. It's very easy. Don't you want to hear the story? Nope. So what do? Stop it. So blame and shame? Stop it. Just stop it. Don't you need to hear the story? No, I don't need to hear the story. Just stop it. Catch yourself doing it and stop it. But I feel this. Stop it. Stop paying attention to the feeling. Is there a lion outside your door? No, there's not. Stop it. Now, the notion of movement and development brings us into Kingdom 2. The world I act and it's by me. I am the agent. I am the person directing my life. I am powerful. I am in control. I am independent. What is happening around me? And how do we feel? We feel empowered. Before we were the victim, now we are the agent. Now we are the actor. And the notion here is, I control my thoughts. I control my life. And to a large extent, a lot of religious science teachings are about this controlling our thoughts. Watch it. Let's control feelings. The thing I ask us to be careful of is that the notion of controlling our feelings is that sometimes that's also called repression. And repression is not identified medically or psychologically as a skilled behavior. Repression doesn't mean it goes away, we just push it down. How many times has somebody irritated you and you just push it down and you push it down and you push it down? And finally, one time they irritate you that last time, and they hit that last straw, and you just lose it, or I just lose it. Repression is not the golden seal of psychological health and psychological well-being. I'm not asking us to give up feeling empowered or feeling in control of our life, but don't let this be the last place we go. Don't let this be the station where we leave the train and we wander off. Because I'm sure one or more of you may have heard the term control freak. No. I'd like you to just close your eyes and picture somebody in your life who's been very controlling. Just picture it. And then think of the warm, happy feelings that come up about their controllingness. And if you're riding along and you just can't get to those warm, happy feelings, I've reverted you back to that first stage of victim. Because their controlling can feel victimizing. It's like, I want to do what the heck I want to do. Stop telling me what I should do. And this action is a little harder in terms of faith. This action is about giving up control, giving up power. For people who are familiar with the 12-step program, the substance or the habit or the condition that has contributed to the addiction, it has had power. And there's been this power struggle between it and me. So my addictive behavior is codependency. How can I make everybody with whom I engage happy? And if I have not pushed them to their joy, then somehow I have failed. If I haven't acted in a way that has brought about their joy, their bliss, their betterness in life, betterness is not a word, but hey, forgive me. That codependent behavior, again, is not identified as the hallmark of utmost mental health. Because that codependency reverts us back to an earlier phase. It makes us victims. It makes us powerless when in fact we're trying to gain power. So, in the 12-step tradition, we let it go. We say that there's something that in its life or a higher power, we lean into that. And we stop trying to do it all. We stop trying the place where the buck stops. So I'll review. If we find ourselves feeling victimized, stage 1, then the action to take, the way to move forward in faith, is to give up blame and shame. If we find ourselves masters of the dominion, but trying to control everything, the step to take to grow is to give up control or power. What's after that? The notion is, if the first one was, it happens to me, and the second one is, it happens by me, the third one is, it happens through me. We let ourselves become vessels of something greater. The best way I can have us think about this, and this is going to go for both the third kingdom and to an extent the fourth kingdom, if you can think of something, some activity that you do and you just get lost, and it's almost like whatever you're doing, it moves through us. I know that Reba engaged Cora.
Cora. Yeah.
And as she is communicating, it's like she becomes this vessel. This wisdom comes through her. There's a speed to it. There's an effortlessness to it. A psychologist monitored the behavioral experience of adolescents, and he was a Czech from Czechoslovakia at the time, when it used to be Czechoslovakia, now the Czech Republic. His name was Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I was so proud when I finally learned to say his name, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, because there are so many more letters in his name than there are in the sounds. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. He identified this experience called flow, where adolescents, but as he did this work, he found that there was also these artists that experience it, and these dancers who experience it, and these people who engage in creative activities. And the creativity doesn't have to be like this artistic stuff. It may be producing something as part of a factory, that you just get into this rhythm and you lose yourself, and you can look back and say, oh my gosh, I can't even believe that this got done. I had no sense of time. This state where we're a vessel is the idea of spirit moving through me. Instead of it being done by me, it's spirit moving through me. And in this, when we engage in these kinds of activities, we just surrender ourselves. We don't see ourselves in it anymore because it's just coming through us. The feeling is that we're guided, we're open, and the kinds of thoughts can be, it's not I, but itself is doing it through me. The way to act in response to this phase is to just give up how much our ego can separate us from the rest of the world. Now, I think you may have gathered from me that I am not an ego hater. I really value the ego because I like that I can be in my state of mind, because when I have an insulin reaction, I don't have any ego anymore. So I know very, very, very clearly, more than probably most adults, how useful an ego, an operating system is. You know, a week ago, my blood sugar is dropping, and, Mykal's talking to me, and there's just nothing coming in. Nothing. I cannot remember eating the delicious carrot ginger soup that he had made. I can't remember eating the burgers because, in fact, I don't know that I did. I may have dropped them. Our dog Opal may have eaten them. I don't know because there was no ego present to be with it. I've talked before about my automobile in an insulin reaction accident. Couldn't figure out what I wanted to do to treat my low glucose, so I spent an hour deciding between juice, which is healthy, and soda, which is less healthy, but it works more quickly. And in my hour deciding which one, and I did eventually choose the healthy one, thank God. I chose the healthy one, but I was so low, but didn't know that I was low because there was no ego present. There was no operating system on board. So I'm in my car, and I'm driving far beyond the exit, and I'm just on autopilot. So I am not someone to diss ego. I'm actually probably someone who has been more ego-free by virtue of my physical conditions than most people you'd ever encounter. So perhaps I do have this this added insight for the value of ego. But I also know that as long as we hold onto ourselves as the all and the be all, we block continued movement. The final stage is where life is at. And this one is the hardest to define because, in fact, this state of being in religious language, in theological language, this is called the experience of the numinous. This is the experience of oneness with the divine, oneness with life, oneness with a meditation that he had in Egypt, where there was just a whole new experience of life, where there's this touchstone with the divine presence. This one is the hardest to describe because the fact of the matter is that it's indescribable. That to characterize it is to put language on it and therefore pull it down. It's something that is experienced, but to name it undoes it, unwinds it. You know, when you try to put words on it, it just doesn't capture it. It's like, and again, when you see that amazing sunset, and you pull out your phone and you take it, and then you look at it later, and what you saw, what your perception was, and what that picture looked like, it just doesn't measure up. You're like, this is not what it looked like. These experiences, these encounters with grace, encounters with truth, these encounters with wisdom, these encounters with wholeness, these encounters with wonder. This is really what inspires art, because it's an attempt to try to capture it and to share it again, to let it be encountered, to let it be known. So this notion that spirit expresses as me, the divine expresses as me, life expresses as me, it's really an experience, and I apologize, and I acknowledge that to try to put it in words limits it, collapses it, makes it so much less than what it was. Because words can only take us so far. Instead, just close your eyes for a moment and just let come forward an experience of truth or wisdom or wholeness, life, vitality, presence, beauty, wonder, glory. Let it rise to consciousness. Breathing in, breathing out, let it fill every cell of our bodies. Let us see ourselves radiating with it. in that afterglow, in that experience, the action of faith to take is that we can experience limitless time. It may be the kind of experience that then sets us up for failure in the future because we're like, I want that. I want it. And I'm going to do everything I can to recreate those circumstances. Many, many years ago, a scientist, Heisenberg, identified this condition called the uncertainty principle. And the notion is that to know where an object is, a subatomic particle is in space and time, you can't know both the object and the presence of where it is. The uncertainty principle is you can either know about the object or you can know its location, but you can't know both. Because the minute you try to the particle, you've adjusted the energy. Our focus on it changes its energy, and that changes its where it is. So I use that concept, that idea from physics, to identify that notion, that experience, that numinous, that experience, that encounter with something that is so big, we don't have words for it. And when we try to get words for it, we stop describing it. We move around where it is and how it is that we experience life. Each one is a different orientation in faith. And rather than holding ourselves to a level of expectation, my invitation is to just track where it is we think we are. At any given time, are we victim? Are we agent? Are we vessel? Or are we simply one? And in that, just capturing it, we engage our faith differently. There are times when we need that frequently in religious science. We need that God, fix this. Please fix me. Religious science doesn't do a great job of describing how it is that we encounter the divine in the midst of feeling completely, for lack of better word, sorry about this, but just pooped on. That is like life has pooped on us and we are not loving it. Rather than judging ourselves about it, we just, oh Spirit, what the hell is going on? The Torah gave us that experience when Jacob, who became Israel, wrestled with the angel. And wrestling with the angel, he didn't win. He had his hip displaced. Don't we sometimes feel like wrestling with the divine is displacing our hips or our brains or our fingertips or our toes or something? Something is going wrong, and when the divine steps in, we're not like, oh, it's all better. Jacob wasn't even Jacob anymore after that wrestling. He became Jacob and Israel. He became a different being. When we find ourselves in a victim stance, give up the blame, give up the shame. When we find ourselves more empowered and that we are an agent and that we are an actor in the world, the thing is that we can give up that power. And if we give up that power, it doesn't mean we're going to slide back to the place of victimhood. It means that maybe we're open to something new, something more resilient, something that gives us greater flexibility, where maybe we can let go of some of our habitual ways of hacking out how it is that we think life should be, and we engage with life more openly. When we find ourselves as a vessel, when we find ourselves just loving what we're doing, when we find that chicks and knee-high chicks and knee-high experience of flow, and we just notice it and say, ah, cool, rather than trying to hold tightly to it. Our surfer, who's surfing on the wave, doesn't hold tightly to the wave, doesn't hold tightly to the board. And in that experience of oneness, the faith there is just that I am one with life. The song, I Believe I Can Fly, is a touch point to that sense of enthusiasm of being able to take up our power, to be able to let power move through us into oneness that didn't seem possible before. So, I invite you to just take a moment and to center, to get still, and allow ourselves to just identify what kingdom of consciousness are we most aware of right here and right now. And recognizing that kingdom of consciousness. Life happens to me. Life is done by me. Life happens through me. Life happens as me. I just identify the presence of life. I identify that which lives and moves and has its being in, through, and all, in, through, and as all that is. There is nothing that stretches beyond this life, because this life is the very container. This life is the vessel, the vehicle, the means through which all that is happens. And I know that I am one with that life. I know that all that I encounter is the face, is the hands and the feet, the heart, the immune system, the automatic action. There is no place where life is not, and it is in all. So I speak this word. Life is making itself in whatever frame of mind and whatever frame of experience. I find myself in whatever frame of experience everyone finds itself. But life is as close as the next breath. Faith is the knowing that I can breathe out and breathe in again without worrying about that. So I give gratitude for the presence of life, for the presence of faith, for that automatic action of life moving through all that is. Even as life is passing with the deaths from coronavirus around the world, I open myself to the knowledge of so many care providers that are standing by in reverent witness, in asserting care and love and gracious giving. That where all of those people are going, that their memories, that the power of their lives propels so many lives. It endows such grace, such beauty, such love. And I release this word to the automatic action of the law. I know that divine life is always making itself its being. And I say, Amen, Ashe, and so it is. So, thank you.
This time I would just like to thank everyone that has joined us on either Zoom or on Facebook or in person. Your presence is a gift to us and a gift to the world. And if in turn you would like to give to Northern Light Spiritual Center, you just need to go to our website, which is northernlightspiritualcenter.com, and hit the donate button, and it will be done. And so in this givingness, I am grateful for this sacred space that we have entered into this day and this time. That we can set aside everything around us that has gone, that we feel has gone maybe crazy, out of whack, out of balance, and just center ourselves and take ourselves to that place where we know that we are that divine essence of God. That we are present here and now as expressions of love, of peace, of joy. And in not allowing everything to be done to us. And step out and allow things to flow through us, the flow. I love the idea of the flow because it allows me to know that there is something greater than I am. And so with that, I give thanks for each and every person that has ever attended or contributed or been a part of Northern Light Spiritual Center from its inception. I give thanks. And I give thanks for those who will come after. And so in this time of gratitude and centeredness and that peace and that love that each of us are, I give thanks. And I say, and so it is.
And so it is.
And we'll be here, same time, same station next week. Thank you.